Today, we're talking about starting your own business and what it takes to get to that point of actually sitting down, working for hours every week, and starting your own business. My name's Bradley Valentine. We have Troy Miller here. We are the owners of Sasquatch Gun Oil, and we own our own business. If you see what Troy has right there, that's our oil that we make ourselves. We have our own products. And over the last few years, we've been working together with another one of our business partners, Dan Adams, at making our own business. It's been a difficult process. We've run into a lot of different things. And over the next few weeks or months, we're going to talk about all the different things that you have to go through. But today, we just want to talk about that very first point. So if you're like us, and a lot of guys in their 30s and 40s or 20s, are very imaginative. They want to start their own business, right? They go to work and the 9 to 5 isn't enough for them, or maybe it's too much. Like, I need to do my own thing. And I think all three of us in this business are like that. And if you want to do that and you want to start your own business, you have to have an idea. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a product, a service, some sort of idea. So what Troy and I are going to go over today is what ideas or products or services should you use? And the number one point I have is do something that you know well, something that you have a lot of information about. So for example, let's say you're really interested in cars and you work at local mechanic and you're good with working with engines and oil changes and things like that. That would be a great place to start if you want to make your own business. What would be a bad place to start would be, let's say you struggle with computers, you're great with cars, and all of a sudden you want to go into selling computers. That might not be a good place to start because you don't really know what you're doing there. So that's my number one talking point. We'll go a little bit more into it. But Troy, what about you? What are you thinking of a good starting point?
You actually hit it right on the nose. I agreed with you. It's that personal interest component. So you pursue something that where you have that personal interest, something that you're an expert in. You may
Yeah.
have been doing it for years because you enjoy doing it. And you get to the point where, all right, maybe I'm tired of climbing the corporate ladder. Let
Yeah.
me build the ladder, and everyone can follow up the ladder behind me type of deal, right?
Yeah.
But it starts with that personal interest. You got to do that in a space that that you are competent with
Yeah.
and understand. And like you said, if you're a mechanic and you go and try and sell computers or even be a computer tech, to solve computer viruses, whatever it might be, you might see a lot of struggles,
Right.
and
Yeah.
especially if you don't have a real good understanding of how computers work.
Yeah. Troy, let's use our product as an example. And Troy is the founding member of Sasquatch Gun Oil. He's like the first guy who started it and brought Dan Adams and then me. I came last. So, Troy, gun oil, right? That's
Yeah,
essentially our main product.
right.
But there's also a little bit more to it. Where is your familiarity with our product or what we're offering? And we'll go from there.
I was in the military like Dan,
Mm-hmm.
except I didn't do 30 years. I only did one contract, 6 years. So I was
Okay.
in from 2006 to 2012. In 2012, my wife and I separated from the military, and we proceeded to go to school and use the GI Bill and do everything that society says, get a degree,
Sure.
get that job, right? And I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in 2020, that being the year of COVID. The whole job thing never really worked out because of various requirements that I didn't really want to cave into. If you
Sure.
know what I'm talking about. From there, I was like, if I don't have a job to go to, then I've got the time to build a business with what I have, where I'm at. I started with growing tomato plants, starting seedlings to sell at a farmer's market, which that led to a high soil consumption. So then I looked into how to build my own soil. And so I started marketing and mixing and marketing my own soil. And there was an element of volume, but that I couldn't achieve because people need a lot of it. And
Right.
had a single concrete mixer. Well, as far as how it goes to the gun oil, my time in the military, I was in the armory. All right. So I was maintaining the firearms that were in the armory. I was accounting for them before every
Mm,
shift. And I was issuing them the rifles and the pistols out to the guys working the road and the flight line for security and law enforcement. And I'd gotten, call it a habit, call it a routine during the time where it's just cleaning guns and
sure.
checking
Yeah.
the cleanliness of them, put my finger down into the little chamber area and checking the carbon on it. And the oil we had used was CLP, which is a petroleum distillate. And
Yeah.
so that was my knowledge of it, of the gun oil, my experience. Then I had met Dan, and Dan and I were talking and about making oil. um, the initial purpose or initial what we were trying to make was basically biodiesel. I'll come to find out it makes a really great gun oil. And
Yeah.
he made the comment about being a parts cleaner.
Yeah.
So I countered with how would it be as a gun oil. So we cleaned our guns with the oil. As far as the personal interest, right? It's the firearms.
That makes sense. And, if you're listening to this, you don't necessarily have to be interested in firearms or Sasquatch gun oil. But I think the point is it came from a perspective of like knowledge. If you
Yeah,
think about Troy,
yeah.
you were in the military, you worked with the armory. You know what cleaning a gun looks like. That's our number one talking point is like, how well do you know this product? Are you familiar with it?
So the personal interest was one. The other two that sort of a business interest. So businesses are their own
Mm,
separate operating entity, and they'll have their own interest based on the peoples who make up the companies and their interests. So there's a business interest, and then there's solving a problem.
mm,
So if you're wanting to start a business, look for a way that you know how to solve a problem that's plaguing either your community or at a larger scale, the state
I like
or
that.
your region or even the country as a whole. Oil seems to be a gasoline, right? Petroleum, the price of oil seems to be a major thing. So if someone
Yeah.
can figure out how to produce more oil at $30 a barrel type of deal, that would translate to the gallon, which would save money for people at the gas pump. So that's solving a problem.
I like that. And I like the idea of solving a problem. And we're just going to use Sasquatch gun oil for a second because we have a lot of different businesses involved in Sasquatch gun oil, like the firearm business, petroleum, oil. Like we think about like Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, right? That's where a lot of
Yeah.
oil production of the world comes from. And all that is kind of wrapped up in this subject matter. But it's not just oil, right? Or gasoline. But it's also like we get a lot of our product from used cooking oil, which could be
Hmm.
from like vegetable oil from a local restaurant where they may dump it down the drain or pay someone to dispose it. We take that and we repurpose it, right? Obviously we use some chemicals, our own filtration process, but we take that and we kind of solve it. So again, this isn't trying to us to sell Sasquatch gun oil, but like we're kind of working in that world of solving problems
Yeah.
and doing something that is somewhat helpful. And I really like that idea of like solving problems or giving some sort of expertise to the world where there are issues. And honestly, the whole world has oil, petroleum, gasoline involved with it. Most places cook with some sort of grease or vegetable oil. So our product may seem very niche, and in a sense, it is, right? Not everyone's a gun owner, but it's something that all aspects of different businesses actually run into.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I like that. And I'll go into my next idea. What do you enjoy working with? If you hate certain types of job, let's say you work at a call center, you hate customer service and you hate talking to customers, you've been a server and you've hated it, then you probably don't want to start some sort of customer service based job or company. I've been a server before at Ruby Tuesday. I've also
Yeah.
been on the phones before. If I hate customer service, then I'm probably not going to want to start a restaurant because even if you're the owner and other people are going to be serving the food for you, you still have to deal with customers and treat your customers well. The number two tip for me is, do you enjoy working in a certain area that you want to start a business in. Because if you don't, then you're going to be miserable, right? That's like a big
Yeah.
piece of starting your own business is just getting a lot of enjoyment out of the work that you're doing. And sometimes, if you're like us, that 9 to 5 is fine, right? You're providing for yourself and your family, and you're doing your duty with working. But sometimes it's just isn't fulfilling. But if you start a business with something that you don't enjoy, you might as well just get
Yeah.
a job working for someone else. You're not gonna like it.
What's that saying? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your
Yeah,
life. It's that same concept. So it's that personal interest. You got to do what you enjoy doing. Otherwise, you're going to wake up every day dreading
right,
getting dressed, going to work, to this despicable place, doing this thing you hate,
right.
working with people that are just rude. That's not fun. And that's one reason why a lot of people do build businesses. Anything is better than this, even if that means leaving that secure paycheck and taking that time and that risk to go and build that business, knowing that you may not get financial returns for
Hmm.
several years,
Yeah,
but you do it because you want to do it and you love it.
I like it. All right, Troy, what else is on your list?
The needs and wants, right? Like everyone needs food, everyone needs energy, everyone needs transportation, everyone needs communication. Starting a business, trying to figure out where to start, if you could satisfy a need,
I like that.
that's a good. It kind of regardless of what need it is, you can produce whatever need that someone else needs.
Yeah,
Then that will lead to an element of success because people will always trade in their money for needs. I mean, that's guaranteed. That will always be the case. Food is a big example of that. People will always be buying food regardless of how bad economic conditions are.
when you say needs or wants, we should be able to identify it, or are you saying that as a business owner you should know if your product is a need or want? Can you explain a little bit more?
Talking about a business owner, you own a business that's producing something. You should know what you're producing is either a need or a want. Like
Mm,
Tesla, for example, not exactly a need,
sure.
right? Transportation, you can buy a $5,000 used Honda, and
Yeah.
that'll transport you just fine. You don't need the Tesla, but people want them,
Hmm.
right? And Elon Musk knows that people want a Tesla and don't absolutely need the Tesla. As the business owner, it's what your company produces. Every company that's out there, they produce something, whether it's a need or a want. Sometimes it's both. Um, and
Yeah,
sometimes businesses produce for other businesses, and it's a business to business instead of business to consumer.
sure.
Um, and but it's the same thing. If they're providing for another business, they're providing other business something that they need
Yeah.
or want, um, and is of an interest between the two businesses.
We look at these different businesses, and some of the biggest businesses in the world. You can really argue whether or not certain things are a need or a want, but some of the biggest businesses in the world are like Apple, which
Hmm.
we both use regularly, the phones, their computers.
Hmm.
We have Tesla, like you said, one of the biggest businesses in the world, Microsoft, Google. They're all sort of on that line of, do you need it or want it? But I will say this, they started off as luxury items, right?
Hmm.
Like if you look
Hmm.
at Apple in the 70s, no one needed a personal computer, right? That's where they started. And then they started selling personal computers, and then they started selling laptops, and then they started selling music devices, then they started selling phones, which is really what the business of Apple is today, is the iPhone. you know and you could say you don't need it, but every single person has a phone, right? Like every
Hmm.
single adult has a phone. I'd probably
Hmm.
say every single almost 95% of US adults have some sort of smartphone, whether
Hmm.
it's iPhone or Samsung Galaxy, whatever.
The Android,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so is it a need? Well, no, but they have made it almost feel like a need. Like if I were to go 3 days with without a phone, like what would like it would feel like
Yeah.
I'm lost, right?
Yeah.
Like sure, I would be able to survive. I would be able to eat and I would have shelter. but I wouldn't be able to communicate, kind of like what you said.
That communication component is a need, right? So the phone, yeah, it's got all these luxuries. You got all the games and social media, and you can check your email and do the
Right.
maps and bank and all of that. But it's still a communications device at its
Sure.
core.
Yeah.
It's a phone, which is a phonograph, right? It's to
Yeah.
transmit your voice basically, and that's what a phone is. So it's at its core communications device, which is a need.
Yeah.
All the other, I mean, but when it comes to the needs and wants, if you just need something to communicate, get a flip phone. I saw that they're still selling flip phones.
Yep.
However, the convenience of it, like having the maps on your phone instead of pulling out this giant paper map and trying to figure out the road, you just got it on your phone.
Yeah. It's funny you said you don't need a Tesla. And you're right, you don't need a Tesla. But do you think that maybe Tesla's at the early, like, think the 1970s, 1980s of Apple? No one needed a computer, right? Do you think Tesla's there now? Because in 50 years from now, we might all be driving electric cars with self-driving, right?
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
don't need that right now. You don't need a self-driving electric car. But in 50 years from now, we might be at that point where it's like, well, yeah, we don't need it, but we all have it. Maybe it's not a Tesla, right? Maybe it's some other product that has, but it's
It's
essentially the
a
same
different
idea.
brand.
Do you think we're at that point where Tesla's at a luxury, but in 20, 30, 40 years from now, it might not be?
Yeah, currently it's a luxury. I mean, because you look at the Teslas, even their cheapest model, they're just decked out with some nice options,
Sure.
all the bells and whistles, right? So it's definitely a luxury item. In 50 years, I know that Tesla's coming out with the taxis,
Yeah.
the self-driving taxis. So that could be a need for taxi companies, buying those because it could support their business. As far as the end consumer, I don't know. I don't know. I know there's a lot of people who like to drive. I like to drive, and taking that away from me, not that they are, because it is an option. I don't know. Maybe for the person that lives in the city and their commute's 10, 15 minutes long through a bunch of traffic, then maybe it is nice to have that self-driving.
Yeah.
But if you're out in the country and you have to drive 30 miles one way and you just enjoy being on the road, hand on the steering wheel, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, okay,
maybe
hear
that,
me out. You're kind of like the guy like, oh, I like this, right? I was talking with my wife Carrie the other day, and people resist technology 150 years ago when the light bulbs were starting to
yeah,
come out. Do you think people are like, I have 5 candles. What do I need this
yeah.
electricity running through my house? I like the ambiance of a candle. I don't need a light bulb in my life. I think that to bring us back on point, know where you're starting with your product is what I'm hearing from you, Troy. Like, is it a need or is it a luxury? Maybe it has a long term, 10
Yeah.
to 20 years from now, it might be something else. But know where it is right now. If we think that you have to have Sasquatch gun oil, well, then we're failing because not enough people have Sasquatch gun oil, right? But if we know at this point right now, our product is a luxury or something that you might want, but you don't know you want, then that's a good jumping off point. I love that discussion, Troy, of know whether or not you
Yeah.
have a need or a want. Awesome. I'm going to go with my last point. Work with something that you have some sort of level to put expertise into this product. Let me explain. Let's say you want to write a book. Well, first of all, the number one thing is like how often do you read, right? Because if you don't read a lot, then you shouldn't be writing a book. If you don't enjoy reading, then you shouldn't be writing a book. And then the third step is how well do you write? If you don't write well, then you're going to either have to keep reading a lot, understand this, whether it's taking a course or watching some videos, but you have to have some sort of expertise in your area. And this isn't just knowledge about it or working around it. I would say you need to be good at something to provide something that other people can't. Because there's 1,000 other writers in the world. There are 1,000 other authors who can provide something that you can provide. Are you good enough at it? Do you enjoy it enough that you want to give something to the world? You can do something differently that they can't do. Does that make sense to you, Troy? That idea?
Yeah. Yeah. You just described the master. The master craftsman, the master
Ah,
blacksmith, the
yeah.
master gunsmith. It's the master. It's the one that knows everything about their specialty, their expertise,
Hmm.
that competency.
I guess you don't always have to be the master to start, but
No.
you should know more and more of how to do this thing every day, every week
Yeah.
when you're working with this product, right? Again, if we go back to Sasquatch gun oil, we have learned about plastic, right? This may sound goofy for those who don't understand, but when we first started our product, we're like, we just need something to put our oil into. A few months later, I remember calling you guys, hey, something's happening. Our bottles are literally melting. The oil's coming out of the pores. And like we had to do some research and we had to figure out there's different types of plastic containers. This, for example, I have here, it says LDPE. And we both know what
Low
that means,
density.
right? That means
Yeah.
it's a low density plastic, which means if you put Sasquatch gun oil in here, it would seep through the pores of this plastic and it would warp this.
Yeah.
Whereas there's something called high density HDPE, it'll do the same thing, but it'll take a lot longer. Where we have PET, which is our current bottles, it doesn't do that at all. It doesn't break our bottles. This may seem very particular, but we had to learn and we had to become experts in this area. Troy, I tell people about this when they talk about tariffs and how tariffs are ruining small businesses. Okay, whatever. We tried that whole game of getting stuff from China and it did not work out
What a
well.
nightmare.
Right? You know, maybe they put a 10%, 15% tariff on China. Okay, that's a zero point 0.8 cents more expensive for every bottle. But the Chinese products, my point
They were
is,
garbage.
yeah, my point is we slowly became experts on things we didn't know we had to be experts on. Hell, Carrie, my wife, she never wants to hear about HDPE or LDPE again, right? She's an expert and she's not even part of the business. We spent months working on it. And it's something with a business that you don't know you need, but you have to have expertise or build expertise in areas.
That's the experience component.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what you're going to go through until you're going through it, and then you get the experience about going through it.
Yeah.
So that way, when other people, when they're starting, they ask you questions, and you can just start spilling those things out. It's like the whole trademarking thing. Now, we didn't have any kind of bad experiences with it, but that's where we learned about trademark. There's like, you don't have to necessarily register your trademark, but if you do, then you've got that circle and an R.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas just every other logo, you could just put TM without any other kind of extra registration paperwork type of deal.
Yeah.
So it's just small things like that you end up learning. It's like packaging. Packaging is important too. Not only did the oil seep through our bottles, it was defeating the label as well. So the labels were falling off.
Labels.
Yeah, so it's the whole complete packaging, right? We had to get a good bottle with a good label, and I think that's exactly what, when you're starting a business, you're going to have to go through the packaging component. Everything gets packaged one way or another. For this episode, it's that personal interest.
Yeah.
Pursue something that interests you. If you absolutely want to start a business, make sure you're doing something, you're working in that space that interests you. You're going to learn a lot about it. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of time, but you're going to enjoy it, and it beats holding up trash and asking for scraps.
It's interesting because in the late 2000s, like 2008, when there was a mortgage crisis, but there's also a lot of issues with car companies going under, a lot of issues in Detroit. GMC and Pontiac went under. I don't know the exact years, but somewhere between like 2005, 2015, that general area. I remember a lot of criticism around the people who were appointed to run these businesses had no idea about cars. They were just businessmen. So they understood a lot of things. They understood finances and bottom lines, how to make sure that you're making a profit and blah, blah, blah. But if you don't understand cars, then it might not be a great idea to be a CEO of Chevy or whatever. Troy, have you seen the McDonald's video of the CEO taking a bite of the burger, the Big Arch?
Yeah. Their newest product, is that what he called it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw parts of it. I didn't watch the whole thing though, but I read all about it.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen the video, but essentially it's the McDonald's CEO, which Before this video, we had no idea what this guy looked like. We didn't care, right? We don't need the CEO of McDonald's to go on video, but he decided he wanted to. The new $10 or $12 burger, he takes a bite and he takes like this teeniest, tiniest little bite, and he looks like he's a fit guy, right? Like he looks like he eats well and he probably brings a salad to work every day. He looks like he doesn't eat McDonald's. We don't care, but you just showed the whole world that you don't like your product, you don't eat your product.
Yeah.
No one asked for that. And that just reminds me of being the CEO of your company. Don't show the world you hate it if you hate it.
You have no right to be in that position if you hate the product your company produces.
Absolutely. Now, the difference between this CEO and the founders of McDonald's, I don't think the founders of McDonald's hated burgers and shakes, and fries. I think that's what their big thing was, like a burger, a shake, a fry, and a drink. If they're like, I hate this, I hate restaurants, I hate burgers, I hate fries, then they would have failed. But they figured out how to do it, how to start well, how to get this fast food to you. That's all we have. And I think a few things to think about is like, enjoy what you're doing, know what you're doing, understand your product like Troy said. Is it a need? Is it a want? And go from there. Maybe one day you turn your product into a want, or you turn your product that's a want into a need. That's awesome, right? We don't technically need iPhones, but everyone has one. Or a Samsung, a cell phone. Everyone has one. They sell billions every year. That's all we have today. We're going to continue going down the series of essentials for starting your own businesses. Today was just figuring out that product or service where you're starting. We'll go forward from there and we'll see you shortly.